Hey, what's up, everybody? Jeff, and I've got Mr. Chad Ostrowski with me and our awesome, super awesome guest moderator, Neal Gupta. We were trending the entire hour, Neal, in the top 10 pretty much the entire time. We're literally still trending right now, which is awesome. How are your fingers doing, sir?
I'm doing great. I think I get into the groove of it. It gets easy. Maybe some video game background helps me with it.
There you go.
Good. Yeah, great chat. Good topic. Everyone had a lot to say about it, which is always obviously a good sign. A lot of conversations going on, which is great. I'm gonna turn right to you, Neal. Anything that popped out at you? Did you get the feeling that everyone participating got what you were hoping they were going to get because of the conversations around this, or?
Yeah, better than I guess I would have thought. Not that collective efficacy is a new concept or anything, but there are, I can't take all the names, I forget, but to me it looks like from the little profile pictures that we've got some very young educators across the country that know the research behind collective efficacy well and are living and breathing it. They definitely understand kind of what it needs to do that and have some structures and processes around it. That's great.
Around the country,
Yeah.
and actually, there were 5 countries that I counted represented tonight in Master Chat, which was awesome, including Ireland, which we get one from Ireland every now and then, which is awesome. So, hey, Mark, what's
Very
up?
cool.
Glad to see Mark checking in.
That's great. Great. Mark did a great job last week, so it's great to check out again. It's awesome.
Chad, any general thoughts like from the conversations that were going on for you?
So I had the same feeling that Neal did, I think, and I was kind of impressed with the amount of people that knew about collective efficacy already. But I was also impressed that, like, I don't think collective efficacy is a term that's used a lot in at least a day-to-day in most teachers' lives.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what this chat was able to do was, by helping teachers understand, and Neal talked about the definition before going live, and just, I think some of the questions were really effective in kind of like weeding out what collective efficacy is. I think a lot of teachers, whether they realize it or not, practice a lot of those research-based things that collective efficacy preaches. So whether they knew it was collective efficacy or not, I think a lot of them are doing these great things. And I think it was really powerful to kind of see, whether you realize it or not, like,
Mm-hmm.
you're making positive steps towards collective efficacy. And what I think I gained most from it is being able to be like, hey, like all of these best practices are kind of embedded in this one concept. And that's always a really powerful thing. And to be able to kind of put a name on it, put a stamp on it of collective efficacy, I think was a big kind of a news flash for some people. They were like, oh, sweet. Like, all these cool things I was doing, like, this is what you call this now. So there were like 2 camps, right? There's like, I already knew what this is, and I fully understand it and know the research on collective efficacy. And then there's like, I wasn't really sure what collective efficacy is, but I fully support, understand, and do a lot of things that are collective efficacy. So I think regardless of which camp, like, it was a really cool kind of epiphany for a lot of people, regardless of which camp that they came to. So I really enjoyed kind of seeing people be like, yeah, like, I do this too. Like, that's amazing. Like, so cool. Like, I love seeing that.
Hi, Pam.
Pam's a rock star in Moose Lake, Minnesota.
Here to kind of help keep that conversation going. It was powerful. I think for me, I think a big learning shift was, and for the most part, I go back and think about high school and elementary school when I was in school, and it felt like it was just, there was a teacher and there was 30 individual students that were kind of like just individual ships that were, sailing kind of in their own direction. And, the teacher, it was like the teacher was working with each person isolated, and that was it. And then maybe every now and then you'd have group work, and then you'd go back again to being in a silo. And the idea about we talk about learning systems or learning communities, or we talk about that, the research behind collective efficacy, when we talk about Hattie's research and visible thinking, there's an effect size. And the effect size, for people that may not understand that concept, but there's research that's out there that says that 0.4, if you just know anything else, but 0.4 is supposed to be a hinge point of when there's supposed to be significant statistical return that happens. And things that are 0.4 might be some, like we know, for example, like, holding kids back or demotion of grades sort of thing is a negative effect size. We might talk about formative feedback being like a 0.7. So that's almost double when you talk about 0.4 being after good formative feedback. That collective efficacy, 1.57. So
right.
Jumps off the needle. And what it really comes down to is how do I bring my classroom together? I posted in there that last year I was in a classroom in the month of February, and I asked about the name of this student that was kind of walking away, and they said, we don't know who the student's name is, the classmate. They didn't know the student's name. And I thought, we're in February. This is like 6 months from now.
Yeah.
We're not saying we have to be best friends with each other, but we have to be in a place where we know that if we work together collegially, and work together in whatever system it is. If principals are on this right now, how do the teachers work together? Not just in a department, but if everybody's working together, going in the same direction, and have that confidence, and they have the tools to be able to do that, it's just going to move things a lot faster. And so when teachers think about that, they think about, how do I have a classroom of learners and build community? Forget the subject matter right now. If I could just bring kids forward, you're going to be able to you're on your way to have power.
Sure.
Yeah.
I like what you mentioned there, and we talked a little bit about this at lunch today, so I'm kind of glad you brought it up, and that is collective efficacy and its application at multiple levels of education, right? Because if you think about collective efficacy, it doesn't have to be like a classroom thing or an administrative thing or a building thing or a janitorial staff thing or a safety and security thing. Like, collective efficacy can transcend all of those things. And so, like, depending on the scale and the scope of the vision, mission, or goals that you're trying to accomplish, the scale of the collective efficacy can then adjust to that. And the inclusive people, the stakeholders in that, the attainment of that goal can also be adjusted. So I think that was a really huge takeaway from our conversation today, that I think was highlighted again today. And I really like the fact that, like, when you think about this, to be honest, like, collective efficacy, I love that you mentioned Hattie as well, but it's just good practice for any team, for any goal-driven team, right? Whether you're business and education or anything, like, having that common mission and people knowing their place in that common goal and that camaraderie and that collaboration, like, all those are foundational to the success of any organization or entity, whether it be a classroom, school, district, or state educational system, right? Mm-hmm. So when you have those things in place, you can make steps, and then you can put supports and scaffolds and resources and tools in the hands of the people who need them to meet those goals, as opposed to not having it and trying to just kind of hodgepodge your way through and make it work, right? So I think that was really powerful. I really enjoyed that.
Neal, were there any of the questions, Neal, that you saw, you got answers that were surprising, or whether good or bad, to you, that maybe were unexpected answers or directions that the conversations went in from those particular questions?
I think that the overall, the general theme of just the involvement of strategy part that comes along with it. Obviously when I got asked to come do this chat, I thought, what a perfect marriage of collective efficacy with mastery-based learning. Because I really think that when you put those two together, I don't think that you can do mastery-based learning in this vacuum. Yeah. I don't think you're going to get the return level that's there. And so I think what surprised me again was we've got some very, very smart, talented educators. Hey, Worthington City Schools in Ohio, come, take a look if you want to come over to bright, sunny Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
Some of these educators were just phenomenal, because what I gleaned from them, with, I guess, the thread through all the questions, was they had plans and strategies. Most often on these Twitter chats, it's coffee conversations, and we talk about theoretical things, and we throw out words like, "Oh, sure, we should differentiate," or "Sure, we should." Yeah. We should do such and such, but nobody ever has grounded tactical strategies and tools and tips and things that they're actually doing in their classroom. And I picked up, I can't wait to go back and take a look through the archive. Yeah. There are people that are practicing in their classrooms right now, and it's unbelievable.
Yeah, that was really awesome. I really enjoyed that as well.
I mean, Taylor, give a shout out to Taylor Bray if she's still listening in on this, but she posted on there and she real quick made the connection between her school's mission statement and vision to what happens in that classroom culture. That's huge for a teacher to be able to do that right away.
Yeah. Yeah. And that speaks volumes about leadership too, right? So like the fact that a teacher can make that connection, the fact that they can articulate and cognitively make those connections, that says volumes about staff buy-in to that mission. And that says volumes about so much more. I know you know that from a leadership standpoint in a district, from what you do day to day, but like the way your teachers act when you're not around and the things that they post on Twitter and make those connections, that's where you really find out, you know, how effective is this actually, right? And I also love the fact that you mentioned the collective efficacy in conjunction with mastery learning, because something we talk to teachers all the time. And you heard the presentation about the good method today, actually. But something we talk to teachers all the time about is building the right culture in your classroom, right? Because mastery learning alone or a grid alone is a single piece of instructional. But if you don't build the growth mindset, if you don't build the culture of learning, if you don't build the support and the peer-to-peer support and the scaffolding and the one-on-one conversations and the lack of fear in these other cultural pieces that drive sort of in the background of everything else, like it's really easy to fall flat if those pieces aren't in place. So without building those foundational pieces, using these pieces, like I love that you made that connection. So I agree 100%.
Yeah. Go back to Jeff. To I guess another specific question would have been when I asked the question about risk taking. What type of risk taking?
Yeah.
And to be honest, I was expecting a little bit of like crickets chirping and really not sure what I was going to get. But again, there were so many people that talked about that's just part of the culture. Just like you said, Chad, it's part of the culture of what we do in our classroom, that we create this safe environment for people to be in that risk zone. But they're safe to do that because we want them to go beyond. Again,
right.
If it's in a traditional grading system, or if it's in a traditional setting where there's start and stop times, I think then they kind of just go on for the ride and wait for something to close out as far as a grade. Hey, I got my D, I'm going to move on. I really think that in a mastery-based approach, I think when they set that culture up, I think everybody seemed to have a good handle of, yep, risk taking is part of the culture in our classroom, and it's something that we do and we gravitate towards.
That was actually one of the one sometimes some Thursday nights I do a really good job of this, and some nights I don't. Tonight I did where I take screenshots of different ones. I usually get really good, like I get like 10 of question 1, and then I forget. But I did grab one off of your question 4, which was about risk taking, and Nora Pace, which is at Miss Pace, writes. She said risk taking is hard, all caps. Students are trained not to show struggle. Things that help. Lots of ungraded assignments, open and informative assessments. Show me what you've learned. Opportunities to revise. And she said, I say you never have to be perfect. You always have to try. Just like that's just her culture in her room. And that was sort of what you were touching on there. Like she has that embedded in. So yeah, that was really cool to see. I love seeing that type of stuff. So, Chad, anything that sticks out that you can think of, any particular tweets or answers or threads that went off or anything?
I really like the risk stuff. Like even what you just talked about, like obviously we talk about failure a lot, right? Like first attempt in learning, FAIL is one of our mottos. So like allowing students to be comfortable in removing the fear of failure is such an important part to building a positive class culture, right? Because if students need to feel like they have to be perfect all the time, anything less than that becomes a negative. When in that imperfection can be amazing growth. For example, if a student incorrectly tries to solve a math problem, their approach could be ingenious. It could show growth in their understanding of the process, even if the outcome isn't quote unquote perfect. And if you're not facilitating, and I'm using math as an example here because I think it's the closest target here, but in that scenario, if we expect perfection, the student sees it negatively. But if we expect growth in learning and good ideas, and we're going to celebrate that mistake as a process in the learning, that can be a really powerful tool. And if you build that up enough, students will take more risks and they'll be able to try more things. and they won't shut down.
Yeah.
I told a story today when we were in Worthington about, when you hand out a paper and a kid goes, I'm not going to do this. Well, a lot of times when that happens, it's because they're afraid that it's not going to be perfect. They're not going to be able to do the work because they're not embodying and owning the fact that failure is a part of learning. Because if you don't build that culture, they won't believe that. But if you build that growth mindset into students, if you see failure as part of the process of learning, and you build that correct culture, and you build risk-taking into the culture of your classroom, all of those become amazing learning opportunities. And honestly, that's where you're going to see the most growth. Students who do things perfectly never learn anything. Like, if you really think about that, if you give a student 20 questions and they can answer all of them perfectly, no growth has actually occurred. I think we all agree with that because they already knew the answers.
Yeah.
It's only when students struggle, and now we're getting into productive struggle and some other things like that, but it's only when students struggle and have the opportunity to take risks and fail and get pushed to the bounds of that zone of proximal development that they're going to see the most growth they possibly have. And I love that about just that whole conversation. And that was a really long way to say that was my favorite part of it.
Great. It's great. We're fired up.
I'm loving it. I want to do a quick shout out. Next week we've got Evan Robb. Here I'm gonna throw his stuff up there. That's E-Rob Principal. He's leading us next week with Graydon Then and Now. So Graydon,
nice.
Chad, we always know how that goes. So it's gonna be fun to talk about grading and see where everyone's at and where their thoughts are. I'm really interested in this one to see if the passion comes flying through with just fiery rage, or like how like
my knuckles.
I think
my knuckles extra for this one. That one's always.
I think those little. We always have those offshoot conversations and those threads. I think you're going to have some of these that go really deep next week, where people get just totally lost after one question because they get into a deep conversation and forget that there's other questions coming up. Which I love when that happens because they're really getting engaged. But it's going to be really interesting because I think most likely, based on what we see, Chad, when we're traveling all over, is that there's such a varying degree of where people are from traditional to standards based and everything and anything in between, and the ways and the steps. So that's gonna be an exciting one. So excited for having Evan do that. Neal, awesome chat, man. This was
amazing
great.
Job,
great
man.
topic. You were all over the place doing it.
It was a day full of Neal.
Yeah, it was. We had a lot of Neal today, didn't we? Yeah, we got to hang out. We let Ray get a little Neal earlier at Beham, and then I had to get back in. So yeah, this was great. Really good chat. Any final words, Neal, that you want everyone to kind of take away from tonight or anything?
Yeah, I know that before the chat, there were a couple people that were asking for resources. Where do I find more information on collective efficacy if I don't know about it too well? I would say that Peter DeWitt, find him on Twitter, do a Google search for him. He's written books on collaborative leadership, which spotlight some of the collective efficacy work. But you'll find blogs and articles that he's written on that subject area. He will take you through, and what I appreciate about them is it'll be very practical. So check out Peter DeWitt.
Is that the right spelling right there? DEWITT? All right. Awesome. Just Google that.
So take a look, and obviously anybody can direct message me for more information, but
absolutely,
I'll point you to his stuff.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, truly appreciate your time. It was a blast meeting you in person today and spending some time with your admin team and then having you on the chat. It worked out really well, the timing, the schedule. That was great. So we truly appreciate you and everything you guys are doing down there and this tonight. Everyone watching, thank you. You guys are all amazing. Everyone that was in on the chat, we love you guys. Make sure next week, same time, same place, 8 o'clock Eastern time over on Twitter. We'll be here prior to talking about it. And next week, actually, we've got some cool announcements coming out. We're releasing a new course next week. So keep close to social media and emails and stuff. And there may or may not be another pretty cool thing happening next week, too, that I'll leave you all in suspense for. So we will see you guys next week back here. And until then, we'll see you over on Twitter and everywhere else. Appreciate you.
All right.